It's that time again. It's tier list time. It's not turtle time, like the NPCs say. It's tier list time yet again. Let's do some tier list, gamers. PvE tier list, you all know the drill at this point. We're going to break this down. We're going to do offensive supports. We're going to do defensive supports. We're going to do damage builds, all in the context of group PvE. So that is open world metas, fractals, strikes, raids, whatever. All that kind of good stuff. And of course, a couple of things will have changed. We've had some balance patches since the last tier list, and we've got brand new weapons also added that kind of shakes up some builds, makes some builds actually exist that didn't exist previously. So let's go ahead and get on into it, okay? Disclaimer, I always feel the need to give a disclaimer here. Remember, don't take this too seriously, right? Like, it's content. It's for the gaming. All of these builds are perfectly fine, right? Like, even the stuff that's going to be rated a little bit lower, like down in C tier. Like, C tier is going to be more than enough to basically clear all content in the game, even including, like, the really high challenge mode stuff. So, just bear that in mind. But let's get down to business with all of that. First up, offensive supports. Let's get this done. And this is probably the one that I feel like has changed the least, actually. So, you know, I just gave that big speech about how, oh, balance patches, times are changing. But then not really with this one, actually, because guess what? You know, no surprise here. God Emperor tier, okay? The Emperor, okay? Here it is, guys, okay? Herald has watched Dune 2, and Herald is the Emperor of the entire universe. It's still God tier. I would actually say this build is still the best build in the entire game. Power Quickness Herald, Condi Quickness Herald, whatever flavor you want to play, it is absolutely fantastic. Hard carry people in open world with this build. Hard carry people in all instance content with this build. It's just beautiful. You know, it's just, man, I love playing this build. It's fun to play. It does 1 billion damage. It gives quickness at 600 radius. It gives 25 might for some reason. Fury, protection, swiftness. Oh my goodness. Wow. It's the complete package. This build is absolutely cracked. It is definitely a cut above the rest when it comes to the offensive supports. It really, really is. And then let's kind of rename all these tiers to kind of accommodate for the greatness of the Herald over here. But anyway, moving on. Let's see. Ooh, things might get a little bit exciting, actually, here. One thing I do want to say, S tier, I would say Alacrity Scourge. This build is extremely good, I think. It does force you to run a quickness defensive support a lot of the time, actually, which is not always ideal. But there are some pretty good ones now, actually, especially with Heal Chrono existing. Like, well, actually, spoiler alert, Heal Chrono is really, really good right now with the new rifle weapon in particular. And that actually has made, in my opinion, Alacrity Scourge a lot better. Because, of course, you can run the Chrono as a quickness, right? Because actually, right now, heal quickness builds are not super hot. Herald is definitely very strong right now. Heal Herald, that is, right? But Heal Firebrand, not really. It's not really that great. Heal Scrapper, it's been improved, but it's really not that great currently. And Heal Berserker, funnily enough, we'll get to that later. I feel like I'm spoiling the next tier list at this point. You know, look, I'm terrible at this. But Heal Berserker, actually pretty good, actually. You know, it's you know, and even Heal Untamed has been improved, but still, I do think Alacrity healers in general outperform, with the exception of Heal Chrono that we'll get to later. But that actually definitely makes this build significantly better, actually. So condition damage, Alacrity Scourge, really strong build. Great utility, very good boon uptime. Hit does a lot of damage as well. Does all the usual necro stuff, very tanky. Very, very high tier, in my opinion. Okay, it's a very, very good build. So let's see. Moving on, where are we going to go next? Would I put anything else in S tier? Oh, yeah, absolutely, Chronomancer. This build, very similar to its healing cousin. Really good, actually, right now. Very high damage, some of the best utility out there. Boon access is actually very solid, very respectable as well. Been a lot of reworks to how the stability works now. With the Mantra, Well of Precognition gives stability now and Aegis. It's a 2-for-1 deal, incredibly versatile ability. It really is a Swiss Army knife. All of your boon generation is from traits, more or less, leaving all of your utility skills completely free to do the Mesmer stuff. You can do the portals, you can do Blink, you can do boon removal, you can do Aegis, you can do stability. This build is absolutely sick. It really is. Definitely one that people are a little bit scared of because, of course, it does have a bit of a learning curve to it, but it's absolutely one of the strongest builds out there right now in terms of offensive supports. Again, this is a power damage, quickness Chronomancer. It is fantastic. Play the build. Enjoy the build, my friends. Get in there. Let's see. Would I put anything else in S tier, actually? You know, I'd almost be tempted to actually put Tempest in here as well, actually. Because this build got a lot stronger, actually. Maybe not quite, actually, but Tempest got a lot stronger. The new pistol weapon on the condition damage Alacrity build is pretty damn nice, actually. It's got a lot of damage on it. The boon application is a little bit wonky, to be honest. This is definitely a build that I think really shines in highly organized groups, especially if you're in like a one healer setup. That's where builds can be insane because it does a lot of damage. So I think I'm tempted to put it down into A tier, but this is a build that I feel like every single tier list I do, I always say, yo guys, this patch, Alac Tempest, oh yeah, it's gonna be so good. Like, this build is gonna be absolutely banging, my friends. Let's go. Sick ass build. And then it turns out that it's like, not really, to be honest, but it's really getting there now, actually. There's some, I think the weapon mastery stuff is kind of helping out Elementalists here. It means there's a lot of different options. Like, the new pistol is really strong as well. Does a lot of damage. Even some like kind of nice changes to wash the pain away, actually, making it more consistent to land that heal, so kind of slightly improving the utility there. It's really getting there, I think, actually. It's pretty damn good, to be honest. In a similar vein, actually, I think I'm going to put Renegade in A tier as well. You know, I will actually confess, this is a build I haven't actually researched as much as I probably should have, but the rework really worked out for this build, I think. People were a little bit worried about it with how it's going to turn out and like how powerful it was going to end up being, actually. But I think it's really powerful, actually. All of the new abilities are very similar to the old versions, but have like a more immediate impact almost. Like the Defiance bar on this build is kind of insane. Like, you slap down the Defiance bar, Darkraiser's Daring, and it's like instant 600 Defiance bar because they hard-coded it to have like an extra 400 Defiance bar in PvE, basically. So you absolutely destroy with this. And the damage output is extremely solid as well. It really is. I would say it's not quite as good as the stuff here in S tier, but it definitely is actually a really strong build. It works very, very well, actually. And obviously Renegade is one of those builds that actually tends to shine in fractals a lot because of its Defiance bar capabilities. So Renegade can work out really well there, actually. The condition build, I think, is particularly strong, but obviously, like, power still exists as well. Like, the power build probably needs a little bit of help in, like, raid content and strike content because it just does. But overall, not too bad, actually. In my opinion. So let's see. What's next? Harbinger. Harbinger, yeah, this is absolutely going here as well. It's really, really strong. And now you can even play this as power. Can you guys believe this? Okay? Can you guys believe this? Power Harbinger is actually a thing now with the recent changes. And of course, you can do that. You can do Power Quickness Harbinger. You can do Cogni Quickness Harbinger. Now, the reason why I wouldn't rate this quite as highly as some of the other builds is because it is just basically pure DPS. It is relatively low in utility. Compared to some of the other offensive supports. So while it does do a lot of damage, and it's certainly really strong, and it being ranged is actually really nice too. Because again, like, if you think about it, there aren't that many ranged builds, especially ranged power builds, that really exist in the game right now. So kind of bringing that to the table is in and of itself quite nice utility, actually. But yeah, really strong build, and has multiple flavors now that you can play too. Alongside that as well, so pretty damn good. There we go. Yeah, I do want to actually quickly point out from the chat, actually, the chat, this is a worthwhile comment. In Fractals, Renegade is absolutely S tier. But again, it's very, I'm not gonna try to, I'm gonna give like a general rating of all of this stuff. I'm not going to lean into individual game modes too much. It's going to be general play because it just gets confusing if you start doing individual rankings, especially in Fractals. In Fractals, balance is completely whack because everything is so burst-oriented. Which, look, we don't need to get into that, okay? I feel like we've had that conversation a million times. But anyway, that is the end of that. Anyway, pretty cool stuff. Next up is also going to be Scrapper, I think. Also, yeah, I think Scrapper belongs in A tier as well. Very good damage. Okay, utility is very respectable as well. One thing that's really nice about Scrapper is that it's unkillable, actually. It's completely unkillable because of its lifesteal that converts damage into barrier. Can actually do stuff like stability as well, with a couple of trait adjustments or ability adjustments, no problem. Very good CC, has a great damage profile. It's very, very bursty as well. It's just very reliable. You know, the thing that... The weakness of this build, again, is that it's not exactly a selfish build, but it's just... You're competing with Herald, and that just doesn't feel good. You know, like, yeah, you can revive people with your gyro, but can you give every boon in the game at 600 radius? No. No, you can't. And super speed is nice, but it's almost arguable that like the super speed on Herald is just as good because you don't really need permanent super speed a lot of the time. You need bursts of super speed, and that's exactly what Herald can provide with Chaotic Release, right? With the Glint elite skill as well. So poor old Scrapper, in my opinion, playing second fiddle to the Emperor up here at the top of the food chain. So unlucky in that regard. Unlucky in that regard. But yeah, it's very good. Has some nifty utility as well. You know, like the gyro, you can do stuff like stealth, and it can provide some of the utility boons as well. So it's definitely up there. In A tier, it absolutely is. Okay, next up. Would I put anything else in A tier? You know, some people told me Kondialak Druid is good, but I'm not sure if I believe them, okay? I'm not sure if I actually believe them. Ooh, I want to talk about Quickness Berserker a little bit. I feel like Quickness Berserker and Harbinger are actually somewhat comparable in a sense, I think, in that they're both very aggressive options for quickness builds. So I do feel like Berserker kind of deserves to be in A tier, actually, right? I think it kind of deserves to be up here because I would feel wrong putting it in B tier, even though, you know, B for Berserker, would be pretty important, I guess. But yeah, I'll leave it there for now because this is one of those ones that has really good damage. But actually, is its damage good enough anymore? I felt like there's been some kind of power creep going on with a lot of these builds. Like, is its insane damage enough to kind of warrant it a spot up in A tier, actually? I'm not totally sure. Okay, let's think about this. If I see a Quickness Berserker in Pugs, I'm kind of scared. Okay, like that's the thing, right? Because it is good. It does pump. It does absolutely blast. But the thing is, whenever I play with people in Pugs who play this, the boon uptime is very questionable, and the damage isn't even good. So, I don't know. Like, make of that what you will, to be honest. I think I'm not putting it in S tier. It's not going there. I think it does so much damage it's allowed to be in A tier, but listen, beware, my friends. Beware. Woo! Okay. Firebrand. You know, I can't believe I'm about to do this, but I actually feel like Quickness Firebrand is actually B tier. Am I crazy on this? No, sure, like, no. How can that be? Oh my god, it's actually not good. It's so weird that there's been so much power creep in boon application. There's been so much power creep in damage and utility that I actually don't... I don't even know. It's, oof. Just having tomes means surely it can't be that bad. But I think it has to go in B tier. I think it's not as good as this stuff, to be honest. Like, you know, there's a couple of things here, actually, that make this, that kind of make this stuff. Firebrand has nice utility on an offensive support. But healers are so insanely strong right now that a lot of the time, it's not that much value. like, even if you have like one of the reasons why builds like the kind of the more aggressive supports like Scrapper and Harbinger and Berserker do so well right now, why these are highly rated, is because healers are insane. So even if you have a lower utility offensive support, your healer is going to carry you. Druid is mental. Chrono is mental. Scourge is mental, right? So it's not that much of a big deal, and that inherently devalues the support that comes from Firebrand in the offensive context. And to be fair, it's kind of happened on heal Firebrand as well. Like, the things that Firebrand does is not... It's not that special anymore, to be perfectly honest with you, in the context of offensive support. So I think it actually does... It's in B tier, to be honest. It absolutely is, I think. Alongside that would be Mech. Similar reason, honestly. Is the build bad? Absolutely not. But it certainly has lost value because other supports have just got better, to be honest. Look, I will admit this. I still have a little bit of a soft spot for Power Alakmech, and Combi Alakmech is actually rather good. You know, don't forget about that build, actually. That alone, it probably deserves to be, you know, maybe somewhere in between here. But, yeah, like, this build is actually... I like it. I like this build. It's hype. You know, your mech just goes in, starts punching. It does 25 might. You can do stability. I mean, come on. Come on, guys. You know, the B tier is for bullied, okay? People always bully me for saying that I like Power Alakmech, and I think it's a good build, and that's why it's in B tier. There you go. Enjoy. I kind of like it. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I like it. Good build. Very solid. Very respectable. Not overpowered, really, at this point, but not bad whatsoever. I certainly wouldn't say that. I absolutely wouldn't. Let's see. I think we've kind of surged through this list, haven't we? Oh, we forgot about Specter. Ooh, where would I put Specter in terms of offensive support? It's probably going in A tier, I think. Oh, man. I think situationally it can be insane. Like, that's the thing about this build. I feel like Specter is always really hard to rate. I struggle with this every time. I think situationally it's incredibly good. And in the right hands, in the right group, it can be 100% in deep in S tier. I think for general use, it probably does end up landing in A tier. Very good crowd control, good damage on the single target, like has some kind of nifty utility as well that can bring to the table. All the thief stuff is always really good, and it has some like decent boon coverage, right? It can give stuff like vigor, you can give fury, swiftness, might, right? Like all that kind of good stuff. Alacrity application is really good on this. It's one of those builds you can play really aggressively. You just do your rotation basically, and you're going to give insane boon uptime. Like, yeah, the reason why I say it's a little bit gimmicky is because it does lack this cleave, right? One thing that's really powerful to have is multi-target damage. There's a lot of situations where you want to be able to hit more than one thing, and that's a big weakness that Specter has, and I feel like that is holding it back from being always amazing in basically, you know, in every kind of situation. But like right now, I think it's like awesome in some situations and definitely has some difficulty in others. So it belongs in A tier, guys. It belongs in A tier. That is where it will live for all eternity. Now we're getting to the weird stuff, okay? Let's see. Druid. I think, oh man, I just don't think this build is good, right? You know, I feel like I get gaslit constantly. You know, two groups of players gaslight me, chat. Do you know who's the worst for this? Willbenders, okay? Alacrity Willbender players and Condi Druids gaslight me constantly. They say, our build is actually good. Then I look at it and I go, how is this good? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Stop, leave me alone, okay? I don't know. I don't get it, to be honest. But anyway, let's mix it up. Untamed. I think this actually goes, in my opinion, right at the top of B tier. This build is actually kind of getting there. They gave this build might access relatively recently. I think it's actually pretty, it's actually getting there. I don't think it's quite as good as any of this stuff yet. I think its damage is pretty respectable. And you can do the bubble, I guess. You can do the fart cloud. I mean, that's good for annoying your teammates, I guess, actually. But yeah, I'm slamming that. Untamed is it's B tier. It's actually pretty good. You know, it's pretty good. I think if you are an Untamed simp, you could argue this to be an A tier, but personally, I do think these builds are a little bit superior to overall. And I have a slight distaste of Untamed because they removed Fervent Force, which was the only good build in the entire game. So, GG. It is what it is. Oh yeah, that's true actually. You know, now you've got Mace as well. Exciting. Job done. Okay, next. Willbender. Okay, I'm just gonna, look, I'm gonna trigger all the Willbender people. This is, it's B tier, okay? Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, I'm not impressed by this build. I look at it and I go, wow, you know, ooh, you can give alacrity, wow, and you're blue as well at the same time. Isn't that exciting? Oh my god. Yeah, I think if this build gave, like, one extra boon, okay, then it would be good, okay? But it doesn't do enough right now. It needs to do a little bit more, or maybe it needs to just crank insanely hard. I don't know. It's, I don't like this build. I'm not impressed by, I'm never impressed by Alak Willbender. Okay, cope harder, Willbenders, okay? Cope harder, gamers. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, next. Druid. Condi Alak Druid. You know, there's some part of me that wants to put this in C tier, but you know, it's getting a little bit mushy, right? It's getting a little bit ambiguous at this point. Like, you know, once you start going below all of this stuff, I feel like it becomes a lot less. I think it becomes a lot less well-defined, to be honest. I don't think this build is particularly strong, though. I'm not impressed. You know, it theoretically exists, but the trade-offs you have to make to give boons, it's a little bit pain. You have to give up, like, the Giga trait, the Omega Grandmaster condition damage trait, which it feels pretty bad, to be honest. Like, CA generation is kind of annoying. Everything is kind of annoying. I don't know. It's a weird build. I'm not sure it really exists at this point. You know, I'm not impressed whatsoever. Okay, next. Oh, I guess, you know, I guess we have to do Power Alak Bladesworn. I mean, this build exists. I'm making a new tier. It exists. This is it exists tier. I mean, okay. I mean, you could play it. I mean, you could play it if you want to. Okay, it's an option. It exists. Do I need to have any more commentary on that? I don't think I do. No, I don't. It's, yeah. Yeah, okay. Catalyst. Now, I think this build has actually kind of arrived. I've played in a couple of groups of this, actually, including some on Serra CM. And you know what? It actually felt pretty good. I'm not even joking. It actually felt pretty damn good. The damage is very solid. The boons are very, very solid as well, actually. It doesn't have that same level of epic flexibility that a lot of this stuff in A, S, and Emperor tier has. But, oh man, I really want to put it in A tier. But then I'm thinking, can I justify that? It's actually one of the builds, it's probably the only Catalyst build that I actually like, okay? Catalyst is probably my least favorite elite spec in the entire game. But actually, it's kind of good. It's kind of getting there. I mean, yeah, you have to deal with energy, but pistol means that this build actually kind of cranks. I think I would put it at the top of B tier, actually. But it feels, look, guys, come on. Look at this stuff. Look at the stuff it's in B tier with. It doesn't belong here. Okay, but maybe it does. Maybe it does. Because I don't think it quite has what it takes to kind of burst up there yet. You do have to be... You are on that rotation. Your utility skills and just utility in general is fairly limited. You just kind of give the basic boons and do damage. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't hate it, to be honest. It's not that bad. It's really not that bad. Yeah. Anyway, I think we've got to do the final couple of builds now. The final builds, chat. Deadeye and Mirage. Oh, man. You know, ArenaNet didn't forget about Quickness Deadeye, but I did. And they did make this build significantly better. They buffed the damage on it a little bit because this build was a brutal casualty of war. It really was. It was so brutal because there was this moment where Power Deadeye was just blasting away, just going crazy. And they nerfed Power Deadeye, but they didn't really separate that for Quickness Deadeye. So Quickness Deadeye was an absolute annihilate. It was just, it got owned in the crossfire basically, but now it actually did get some of its numbers back, which is kind of nice. The issue is that, you know, I almost feel like I should put this in It Exists tier. I don't think it's actually necessarily that weak. It you know, the damage is It Exists, but it's one of those builds that just said, oh, we want to give it quickness. We'll just give it quickness and we'll call it a day, right? And that isn't good enough. Let's be honest. Like, if you look at the way offensive supports are right now, they're all, especially the good ones, they're very utility rich, very flexible, have a wide range of boons that they can apply on demand, right, while still doing good damage, right? Like, just doing good damage kind of isn't good enough anymore. Like, when you're dealing with this stuff, good DPS isn't gonna cut it, to be honest. But yeah, it probably goes in B tier. It's better than this stuff, but I don't think it's very good. I'm unimpressed by this build overall. And then finally, Mirage. I mean, look, let's just get this over with. Yeah, it is what it is. Okay, you know, yeah, it's something. Yeah. This build is cursed, okay? This build is cursed, chat. It's one of those ones that ArenaNet has struggled to balance, and it's understandably so, right? Like, I think it actually is a really hard one to balance because of the nature of confusion, and I think ArenaNet will eventually will keep nudging it over time, but there's honestly a lot of complexity, right? Like, there's a lot of complexity with how the Chaos trait line is working right now, and if Chaos ends up being too strong, then this build could end up getting really, really wonky, and they have to balance that cross-game mode too. The Chaos trait line in general, I feel like, is causing ArenaNet a lot of issues right now, because now Chaos is being played on a bunch of builds in PvP and World vs. World 2. It's like a huge headache, and they're trying to wrangle a design for this class that works in all of those game modes, while still making it competitive with all of the other stuff that's kind of being fairly aggressively power crapped as well. So, I mean, I don't know. It's a bit of a fiesta, to be perfectly honest with you. It's not where it needs to be. I mean, it exists. Like, can you play this build? Yes. Is it particularly good? I mean, I'm not sure I'd recommend it, you know. It's, if you want to be you know how some people want to be like, oh yeah, I want to play the spec that nobody plays. Honestly, Alack Mirage, that could be your perfect elite specialization. Maybe that's ArenaNet's vision for the class. You can be the Desert Mirage of Guild Wars 2, being a class that fizzles in and out of existence at the balanced dev's whims, right? That's the entire role play for the spec, but there it is. But anyway, there we go. I think a couple of mix-ups, actually, you know, like, now that I look at this, like, some things have actually shuffled around, in my opinion, on the offensive support side of things. Pretty cool. And I think what's actually really fun to note, actually, notice how basically everything now has a build. Like, almost every elite specialization has some kind of variant of offensive support, which I actually find interesting. And you know what's even more interesting is that a lot of them are really getting there. Because again, I do want to reiterate here, even the stuff in B tier, these builds, I'd say they're a little bit almost like patchy or unfinished, but they're really getting there now, actually. That's something I feel like I also say every single tier list, but yeah, they're really getting there, to be honest, in terms of all of these things are incredibly good. And again, I'll say it again, like all of this stuff, even the It Exists tier, if you want to go clear like Doom CM with this, you absolutely could. Like if you want to go top DPS and open world with this stuff, you absolutely could. It's just that obviously this stuff, the real good stuff, this is how you're gonna hard carry everyone around you, like have people worshipping at your feet as you pour boons on them and carry open world DPS. That's when you break out the Herald, okay? That's when you break out the God Emperor. It's good stuff. But anyway, that's it for the offensive support tier list. More to come. Actually, we've got defensive supports, the healers, and we've got the damage dealers coming on up as well. But that's going to have to wait for another time because we've got to go do some other stuff. We got raiding to do. But anyway, let me know what you think. Okay, give me your best cope. Like any Willbenders and Druids, give me your best possible cope. Untamed as well, actually. You can also give me your best cope on why you deserve to be in a higher tier. But anyway, let me know what you think, gamers. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the next tier lists. Okay, follow, subscribe, watch the tier list live on Twitch so you can argue with me live on stream. And of course, I'll see you next time. Take it easy, gamers. I'm out of here.